we're going to look at building and publishing our first construct. I'm actually going to do this in a separate npm package rather than as part of the existing project we've got. But of course, you can create constructs within the same project and they can just live in that one project and not be reused, not be shared. But a lot of the time, you'll want to share the constructs between multiple projects or multiple people. So you'll need the CodeArtifact setup that we did in the last lesson. And you need to make sure you've logged in within the last 12 hours, otherwise you won't be able to publish any packages. So we're going to repeat quite similar steps than we did in the last lesson. So let's make a new folder, and in this case we're going to build a construct for a fancy S3 bucket. So I'll do an npm init. We will next our way through all of these. Let's pop into the package.json, and then we're going to set the namespace on our package name here, so we can call that CDK Course / fancy S3 bucket. And then we would like to add some peer dependencies. Whoops, there we go. And we want two packages. We want AWS CDK lib. And now we're going to specify a very broad range here for the version. And you might think, why do we want this? Why do we want these packages to be applicable for such a broad range of projects? And the problem is that we need to make sure that they're compatible not only when they're used within a project that's going to have its own versions, but also when we're using it with many other constructs which may also have their own constraints. So unless we have a real need for a very specific version of these two packages, we're going to go with a really broad range for these, and then we ensure the most compatibility with projects and the most compatibility with other constructs. So let's save that file. Let's do an npm install. Okay, and you can see that the package.json is still the same, that's happy. And if we go into the package lock, those constraints that we made have been resolved into concrete versions of all the packages. So let's open this up in our editor, and in this case I'm going to use WebStorm. Obviously you don't have to use WebStorm if you prefer something else. And I'm going to put the package on the right hand side, and we'll take our existing project on the left. And I'm going to copy over many of the same files that we had. So the ESLint config, the prettier config. We're not going to cover writing tests for the construct in this lesson, so I'm going to leave jest for now. We'll have the TS config, that can go across as well. And then let's check out the package scripts that we've got in this project here. So we've got, where are we, lint and format, and those are going to be really handy for developing a construct. Lovely, let's get those across. And then we're going to need some dev dependencies as well. So I'm going to copy the whole lot, and then we'll slim this down to just what we need. So we will keep types node for now, although I don't think it's going to be very useful. Let's set that to version 18. We're going to want TypeScript ESLint, that's great. We don't need the CDK CLI. We don't need ESBuild. We would like ESLint node, just we may as well have in for later, prettier, TSJS, TSNode, TypeScript. Lovely. So they're all in, and let's do an npm install again. And I'm going to tell my editor, yes, I'm happy to use prettier for this. I just have to wait a little bit of time for it to get installed. Okay, so that's done. I'll tell WebStorm with bucket props. Lovely. And then we call the parent construct with those values. Whoops, and because we're creating a construct here, or extending construct, we don't actually need to pass in any props. So we've got these things to get going with, and now we could just make a new bucket. We could attach it to ourselves, we can call it bucket or similar, and then we can pass in the props like this, but we're not really adding any additional value to S3 just yet. So we'll cover how we can do that in a little bit. But for now, we will have our fancy S3 bucket construct that just makes an S3 bucket. So let's export that again in the index file. So it's available to import from the package name rather than a particular file path inside of our package. Lovely. And then let's try an npm run build. And I don't know actually if we have a build script. We don't. So let me pop one of those into the package script. Lovely, and let's run a build again. Now, where are the files? Let me see the TS config. I wonder if we need to tweak that slightly. Let's say we're going to include everything in the source folder. There we go, that's better. So we've got our dist folder. I'm just going to ignore that in this editor or exclude it. And we've got our files in there and we've got the type definitions. Before we try publish, let's see what's in the npm ignore. So we'd have to specify the node modules in here. That's going to get ignored automatically. We're now not actually going to have these files here, CDK staging, CDK out, because we're not calling the CDK CLI here. And it's got the TypeScript files in here being ignored, but actually I quite like to ship the full source code with a package, just a personal preference. I know you ship the type definitions, which show you all the types of everything, but I do really prefer to have the source code in there as well. I think that makes life much easier. But we can ignore some of the files that really aren't relevant to someone consuming this package, like the git ignore, the instance ignore, the npm ignore, which I think actually is ignored by default. The prettier config, that can go as well, same as our ts config. So we can leave all those out because we're not really interested in an end user seeing those. So let's do an npm publish, and we're going to use the dry run flag to see what files are going to get sent over. Oh, so there's some editor files here for my editor WebStorm, and they're getting included. So let's pop those into the npm ignore. Let's try another publish with a dry run. Okay, that's good. So we've got the type definitions, the JavaScript files, the package JSON, and the source code. I'm happy with that. All right, let us do a publish. Awesome. So we've got the very first version of our fancy bucket construct. So let's take that full package name and version. Let's go over to our getting started project, and I'm going to open up the stack. Let's use my small stack with our SSM parameter, and then we'll do an npm install of that package, the construct we've just made. Lovely. Then let's see if we can do a new fancy S3 bucket construct. And we can't import it. You might be thinking, uh-oh, what's gone wrong here? So when we publish our package, when we produce it, we have to tell npm how to find the main file of the package, how to find the index.ts, which it doesn't have to be called that, but conventionally is. So let's have a look in our package JSON. And let's go and see where main is, and main is index.js, and let's change that to dist/index.js. Let's increment the version number, and let's publish it again. We can pop back to getting started. We can repeat the npm install with version 1.0.1, and then we'll try again, and hopefully with a bit of time, the editor will refresh, and then it will let us import this class. So I'm not really sure what's going on there with my auto importing, but I've added a manual entry for the construct here, fancy S3 bucket, and then we can use that and we can put it in the current scope, and we can say that it is for, I don't know, let's call it fancy bucket, why not? And then we've got the properties that we can pass through if we like. And so if we do a synth, pop it into a file, we can review the template YAML, and then in here is a fancy S3 bucket. And we can then use that to add some customization or some organization specific standards or defaults. So that was how we built our first construct. We made a new npm package. We added the peer dependencies for the CDK library, AWS CDK lib and construct. We used very permissive version ranges or version constraints to ensure compatibility with other projects and other constructs. We exported anything that was useful from the index.ts file here, which is our construct. And we extended construct rather than extending stack, which is what we've been doing previously. And then we built the code and we did an npm publish. One little tip for you, one last final thing. There's an npm package script you can set up called prepublishOnly, which runs before the publish happens. And it's really useful to put your TypeScript build step in there to make sure that you have built your TypeScript code before you publish. Because otherwise you might change your TypeScript code, go straight to a publish, but have forgotten to run TSC again, or maybe you thought you had it running in watch mode and you've left it and it closed. It just helps you out from avoiding that scenario of, hey, I've published a new version and the new version's missing something. What's going on? So something to bear in mind.